Hi, welcome to An Abundance of Books. This is the mid-year book freakout tag, so let's get into it. Let's talk about pretty much everything that I've read this year, everything noteworthy. I've modified these questions a little bit based on just what I want to talk about, but the first one's always the same. What's the best book you've read so far this year? And I'm going to go with Nestlings by Nat Cassidy. At the beginning of the year, I sort of had a goal to read really good books. So what I decided to do was look at other people's best books of last year and pick them up. So this was on quite a few people's best of lists. I want to say Gabby and Ashley maybe, but this is a horror book about a couple moving into a very exclusive apartment building in New York City, and creepy things start happening. Bug related things and gargoyle related things. I've described it as The Push meets Lock Every Door, so if that's something that sounds like it would appeal to you, please read it. It's one of the most true horror things that I've read, and it's written by a man, and he is very good at capturing just how shitty men can be in very specific ways, which I loved. So that is my best book of the year. The next question is the best sequel that you read this year, and I'm going with Bookshops and Bone Dust by Travis Baldree, the sequel to Legends and Lattes, which I know everyone loves. I think I actually preferred Bookshops and Bone Dust. This is a prequel to Legends and Lattes about Liv getting injured and then staying in this seaside town and frequenting a bookshop with this rat and her owl dog, whose name is incredible. Pot Roast? I think it's Pot Roast. And this just did so much of what I loved in Legends and Lattes, but like more heightened. There were some reveals in here that I really enjoyed. The plot in here was a lot more for me, and I sort of wish I had read this before Legends and Lattes, because this improved on everything for me. I don't know if that's going to be the same for everyone, but a very worthy sequel, if not a lot of retread of the first one. But in cozy fantasy, I feel like that's kind of going to happen. And the next question I have is, what is the most surprising book you read this year? And I'm going to go with Leech by, I believe it's Hiron Enns. I haven't read this in a minute, but I think that's the author. This is a very weird book. I never knew where it was going, and I loved that. It's about this doctor who is, it starts with them on a train going to this secluded area to replace the previous doctor who got murdered, and there's a parasite out, and it's all very weird and spooky. It's so atmospheric, and it has a lot of tricks up its sleeve. I think if I reread this, I would find more stuff every time that I didn't even pick up on the first time. It's just so weird in a perfect way. Is that you?
They're all very curious.
I can't have a door closed for 5 minutes, kitties.
They both came up. I'll be buying Elden Ring. Come find me whenever.
Leech is the kind of book that you don't want to say too much about. So if you enjoy weird horror, just weird, I would recommend it. I've rearranged these questions a little bit, so they're a little out of order, but the next one I have is the most disappointing book that you've read so far this year. And I'm going with The Rise of Kyoshi by F.C. Yee for so many reasons. So we all know the live action Avatar came out this year, and it was not well received. I didn't watch any of it, but it did make me want to rewatch the original cartoon version, which I did, and it's just a perfect show. It is so character driven, the arcs are perfect, they take their time. There are enough like meaningless episodes that are just focused on characters while somehow pulling off just so much plot. There is so much plot in that show, and it's perfect. Anyway, then I saw this at the bookstore, and I thought, yeah, I'm in for that. It has a crazy high rating, and so I figured what could go wrong, and did not enjoy this even a little. I gave it a 2-star. This just didn't feel like an Avatar story to me, and I know I'm probably the outlier here because there's extended comics and I'm uncultured, sure, but this just wasn't any fun. It was very dour, and it focused a lot on the previous Avatar 2 Kyoshi. So it was a lot of just like talking about things that we weren't there for, and that wasn't very satisfying. It didn't feel like Kyoshi had her own journey. It felt like she was shoehorned into several other people's journeys. and every time I thought I knew where this book was going and I got excited about it, they didn't end up going that way. Like, one of the opening scenes is they're dealing with the Fifth Nation, who are a nation of pirates. Incredible concept. I was hoping that Kiyoshi was going to join them and sail around or something, and that didn't happen. It was just sort of immediately dropped, which was so disappointing and not what I wanted, and that kind of thing kept happening through the whole thing. The other thing I hate about this is it's by FC Yi, and there's an intro by one of the co-creators of Avatar talking about it, but then there's no acknowledgements for Yi, and just out of principle, I really hate that. I think an author should always get credit and get to acknowledge whoever they want. Anyway, it is a duology, so I do have the second one, The Shadow of Kiyoshi, and it's much shorter. So I am gonna finish it up, and I'm hopeful this might fix some of the issues I had, maybe go in a direction I'm more interested in, but that's not what we're talking about. Huge disappointment. Let's speed this thing up. The next question is the worst sequel that you've read this year, and it is going to In an Absent Dream by Shawnee Maguire. This is the 4th book in the Wayward Children series, and I've given all of the other ones 4 or 5 stars. This one I gave it 2, but this is definitely personal preference because this is, say it with me, another Goblin Market book. I hate the Goblin Market so much because it never follows rules. It's the kind of fantasy that likes to pretend that it's following rules, but actually they're all completely made up and everything is meaningless. I never got connected to this. I thought that the story was so one note and I didn't care. I own the first 7, you can't see here, the first 7, so I own 3 more of the Wayward Children series, so I'm gonna read them because they're pretty, but I don't have a lot of faith in this series for me anymore. I know so many people love it, not yuck and you're yum, it's just fantasy is already kind of a hard sell for me, so I'm figuring out more of what I like, and it's not the Goblin Market. Next question is the worst book that you've read this year, and I am going with The Last One by Will Dean. I don't want to talk about this one too much because I think I'm going to do a whole dedicated spoiler-filled video, but the pitch of this is it's about a woman who is on a cruise with her boyfriend. They go to sleep the first night, she wakes up the next day and she's the only person on board. No crew, no passengers, everything is pristine. What could have happened? How does she survive and escape? It takes some very stupid turns that I was not a fan of. Ridiculous, and a lot of people said it was like a suspend your disbelief thing, which I'm on board for, but I disagree with the execution. Very fast read. I read it very quickly, but it's quite a long book. 1 star. I think it's my only 1 star of the year so far. My next question is the best 2024 release that you've read so far. I have only read 3 somehow. I've read 33 books, but only 3 2024 releases. And my favorite one was Truly Madly Deeply by Alexandria Belfour. This is her 5th novel. I love all of them. They're all so good, and this one featured a couple of things that I really loved, like a bunch of references to musicals that were just perfectly done, but a lot of things that I didn't love. I've noticed a trend in romance recently of infallible heroes. They're just too perfect, and that sort of puts me off from them. This guy was just like too much. But they always feel like Alexandria Belfour books. I think she puts so much of herself into her work that you can always tell when you're reading one of them, and I love being able to connect with an author in that way, I guess is the best way of saying it. So I will pick up everything she does, even though I only give this one 4. Next question is new favorite author, and I have 2. One is Abby Jimenez, the author of Part of Your World. I have previously read 1 Abby Jimenez, and I gave it 5 stars, but I found it very sad. It wasn't like the nice fluffy romance that I enjoy, but this one had the perfect mix of deep and fluff, and I thought that it was perfection. The other one that I have is a wild card, not this book, because it is Delilah S. Dawson, author of Bloom. This is another weird horror cottagecore horror is how it was pitched to me. And I thought that one was really cool, great writing, really interesting plot. And the other thing I've read from them is The Princess Beard. This is co-authored with someone else, but this is like a Princess Bride fantasy spoof with a centaur, and the captain is a talking parrot. It's just ridiculous, but I had a really good time with it. And I think it really shows Dawson's range, so I'm very interested to see what else is out there from them. Next question is your favorite character. I want to do a quick shout out. So this book, The Charm Offensive by Alison Cochrane, I just reread this, and I also rewatched my mid-year from 2022, in which I said my favorite character was Parisa, Charlie's agent in this, and that remains true. She's an incredible character. Every line that she has just like jumps off the page. She's so full of life. She's so fun and sarcastic and just like the best friend, and I love her a lot. Rereads don't count. I am going with All of the Children in A Very Secret Society for Irregular Witches. I messed that title up, don't worry about it. This was a contender for my favorite book of the year so far too. This is a cozy fantasy about a witch who is hired as a nanny to a bunch of young witches. And it's perfect. There are 3 girls here and their personalities are just so distinct, and they grow in such fascinating ways. They're so sweet. And all of the characters in here are so well fleshed out and perfect. There's a sequel to this coming out in November or something, and I could not be more excited. Next question is your new fictional crush, which I have added ship to because I think that's more interesting. And then I'm going to break the rules on both of those because I want to talk about The True Love Experiment by Christina Lauren, because this is a Bachelor spin-off book, one of my true wheelhouses. Charm Offensive, we just talked about, that's a Bachelor spin-off book. One to Watch by Kate Stayman London is also a Bachelor type show, so this is something I love. If you have any recommendations for Bachelor type books, please let me know. But the problem with Bachelor books, this is the only one I've read where she actually falls in love with a contestant on the show. In both this one and The True Love Experiment, they're behind the scenes people, and I just think that's such a disservice to the Bachelor format, especially in The True Love Experiment. She casts all of these prototypes because she's a romance author, so she casts a vampire and a cowboy and a cinnamon bun and just like the hot nerd. They're all so distinct and perfect, and that's what I want in a Bachelor romance. And then she falls in love with this lame producer, and that's stupid. I want this book, but where we actually follow through with the Bachelor premise of it. I think it could be so fun. But yeah, lots of incredible, shippable, lovable boys in there. I had a great time with that one. My next question is a book that made you happy, and I'm going with The Art Thief by Michael Finke, I want to say. Not even struggling with pronunciation, just remembering names. This is the story of a man. This is nonfiction about a man who stole probably 200 pieces from museums over a period of like 10 years. And so it's talking about how he did it and what led to how it ended. And this was the kind of book I got so pumped for. Whenever he pulled off like a successful heist, I was so here for it. Maybe I'm a bad person, but it was just like the intricate ways that he could do something, the times that he almost got caught. It was just such an engaging read. I love narrative nonfiction, and this is one of the best, and I thought it was also so fun to be able to talk about pieces and look them up and like really understand what they're talking about, why this piece is so valuable, or why the guy really connected with it. It made me so pumped. And who gets pumped from a nonfiction? Then we have a book that made you cry, and I once again want to talk about this one because this one made me sob. It was so beautiful and tender. There's a lot of books that make me cry because this is the time to cry, but this one made me cry for like just beautiful writing or nice scenes or people just being happy, and I cried, and I think it was wonderful. But I've cried in quite a few books. This is actually something I started tracking this year, how many books I cry in, and I think it was 7 so far this year. And then I have a book that made you angry, and I have a tie here. I have ACOTAR and Fourth Wing. This is my year of delving into romantasy classics, and they were both fine. I gave ACOTAR 2 and I gave Fourth Wing a 3, but they both just feel like stories of missed potential for me, where you have really interesting worlds and characters you can do something with, and it just didn't go far enough for me. I can totally understand why people love these books, but I think I just wanted that extra little oomph to things. ACOTAR especially, the second half, once we go under the mountain, I cared a lot less. That isn't where I thought the story was going, and I wasn't happy with what I got, so that was very disappointing. And Fourth Wing is definitely something that's set up as a series, and I think if it had done more of the series things in the first book, it could have been a lot better for me. Again, not trying to start fights on the internet. But yeah, these were ones where it's just like, this thing was right here and you didn't do it, and that made me angry. Next question is the most beautiful book that you've bought this year, and I have a tie. Let's talk about this one first because this is the actual winner. But I have Tarangelus by, I have never said this name out loud before, Porokrista Kakpour. Let's go with that. I am sorry. But this is an incredible cover. This is a perfect book cover. This is supposed to be about Iranian multimillionaires in LA who want to have their own reality TV show. And this cover screams that perfectly. I'm so excited to get into this. But the true answer is Done and Dusted by Lila Sage. I don't know if the camera is doing justice to this immaculate cover. It's so perfect. It's got the like comic book dots on it, but it's got this very romantic feel. It's so perfect. This I did read and I gave it 3 stars, which I do think is a little generous, but it's about this woman who is a barrel racer and a boy who's a farmhand, and it's a brother's best friend romance, but it didn't do what a brother's best friend's romance should do, and it also didn't lean enough into the horses. I am a closeted horse girl, and every time there were horses involved I was having a great time. I just wish there was way more of it. But this is a series and every other cover is also incredible, so I'm probably gonna get suckered into reading and buying them all. Next question is a book that you have to read by the end of the year. I already mentioned The Shadow of Kyoshi. This is something I want to, it's a duology. Read it quick behind each other because there's also a lot of characters in this. Do it while I'm still keeping all of them straight, and then I'll have finished a series. So this definitely by the end of the year. And then the other one I want to do is finish off the main Expanse series, the first 3. I've read the first 2. I didn't realize I read the second one in October of 2022, so I really should get on Abaddon's Gate. And I know this is like a 10-book series or whatever, but I'm only committing to the first 3, so I'm excited to see how this thing ends off. And it looks like I did some questions out of order because the next one is what's a new release that you still need to read? The answer is obviously Middle of the Night by Riley Sager. I read every Riley Sager. I did a video ranking all of the Riley Sagers, and this is his first one with a male protagonist, which is interesting. We're all so focused on that. I think because the worst part of Riley Sager books are the female protagonists. He just like doesn't write them well, but it's not an important enough part of the story to really be bothered by it. So I'm interested to see how this one goes. It's another semi-historical setting. I think it's the 70s, but also the 90s. Okay, 1994, which I struggle with sometimes. Just like, why is your book set in the past? Is it more than just so characters don't have cell phones? Which it almost always is just that reason, but I have to read it. I have to know if it's good. Where does it rank? And then we'll end it with what is your most anticipated release for the rest of the year. Again, 2 answers. You Can't Stop Me. The first one is a book by Chuck Tingle. He released Camp Damascus last year, and in just a few days, Bury Your Gaze is coming out. I want to say this is about a Hollywood serial killer, but I'm not sure. He's doing horror now. He's not doing like silly Chuck Tingle things, and I thought they did some really interesting horror, so I'm excited to see what he does next. And then another author we've already talked about, Kate Stayman London, is coming out with a book called Fang Fiction, and I want to say this is about a woman who gets sucked into a vampire romance, or the vampire gets sucked into our world, something like that. But I don't care. I think this is her debut, so this is only the second book she's ever written, and I need it more than I've needed anything. I think it comes out in October. So there you have it, the mid-year book freakout tag. Thank you for joining me. I am going to be around booktube more now. Not committing to any kind of schedule, but you will see me again in the future. Thank you so much. See you next time. Bye.